In this module, we're going to look at geologic time. And so you've learned a little bit about plate tectonics, about the interior of the Earth. Now we need to learn a little bit about how time works in geology. It does work the same as everything else, of course, but we look at very large quantities of time. Millions of years is fairly short in geologic time. And there's two ways that we can look at time in geology. And so what you have here for the first lecture part, there are two PowerPoints to go through because there's kind of two types of time, like I mentioned. One we're going to call relative time or relative age, and one is absolute time. And so with relative age, what we want to be able to do is look at sequences of rocks or events and put them in some order relative to each other. This is when we don't know the actual dates of the rocks or the events. So it'd be like if you had a group of people, you could say, hey, Bob is older than John, and John is older than Susan, but I don't know their ages particularly. I could just put them in order using some criteria. And so that's what you're going to do in this relative age dating idea is there are some rules that we apply that help us figure out the order of things. And so it's broken up into these three parts, but it covers these two main topics here. So the relative age is putting things in order without knowing their numbers. And then absolute age dating is using techniques that we can acquire a numeric value for a rock layer or an event. And so we're usually using something called radioactive decay. And so this is a little physics and chemistry combined, but this idea that certain rocks, not all, contain the right mineralogy, that we can use those minerals because they behave in a specific way to figure out a number and say, hey, that rock layer right there is 250 million years old. And that would be an absolute age date. And of course, what we want to do is use both of these together to tell the story. If I was looking at the Grand Canyon, I want to be able to say, hey, I could tell you the order of the sequences, what happened here. What was deposited first or what was happening second and third, and some of those I could put numbers are to give you an idea of how old some of these things are. And so that's what we would do for geologic time. There are some another little idea that I want you to understand that's called unconformities because it is related to time. And these are events where we strip away material, we remove some of the material, and we leave kind of a missing time, if you will. So there's different types of unconformities, and this little video will go through that for you. And hopefully, when you're done, you can use all of these things to kind of talk about, the story, a road cut or an image, or if you're hiking somewhere, you can use some of these techniques to talk about the history of the land. Because of course in geology, we want to interpret the rocks, they tell a story. And so we're going to use some of these techniques to help us tell that story. So of course there is a quiz over that. Now I'm going to recommend maybe that what you do is do the homework assignment first. And because there's no time limit on the homework, you can work your way through it because some of the examples in the homework will show up on this quiz here. So you can do that and then turn it in. I could look it over for you and tell you, yep, you got it, or here's where you made a mistake. And then you can use that information to help you do better on the quiz for the lecture. There is a little article to read. It's just the USGS, United States Geologic Survey, has put out an article that talks a little bit about the basics of time. And then here's the homework assignment. So it is in a PDF or a Word document, so you can open that. And I'm asking you to calculate a numeric value that you will learn in the lecture portion on the PowerPoints there. And then here's the sequence story. Like this would be a road cut, a side view. And you'd have all these layers, and there's a fault in here where the rocks have been broken, and there's some different types of rocks in here. And so you want to be able to look at those and tell me a story, right? And so that's what we're asking you to do for the homework. And there'll be something like that on the main quiz. So if you can do this first, that might be helpful, but it's obviously up to you how you want to do things in the order for this module. And then of course there's also a lab, and so the lab's going to cover geologic maps. So like we talked about, the labs are off sequence a little bit, but after this lab they will be back in sequence and they'll kind of complement each other a little better. So that's what you're going to do this week, and of course because it's summertime and 8 weeks, you get to do a second module. So make sure you do both for this week, and if you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact me and I will help you out.